what do you see when you see the literacy? I mean, even down to just the reason why literacy issues may be here.
Let's go back to your specialty, media literacy.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about media literacy.
Yeah, that's a big one right there.
So honest, I mean, what does it mean to be literate? You know, I mean, okay, so I can read the words, I can sound them out. But I read a study the other day that 90% of this sample of just average Americans, if you presented them with two articles, one that was clearly opinion-based and biased, and the other that was fact-based and informative, they couldn't tell you the difference between the two texts. Okay, so these people can read, right? But detecting bias, determining objectivity, these are almost political issues, because in our country we can't even agree on what the truth is. But in its most basic form of literacy, being able to read and comprehend, I would say that kids are doing better. Now, I do need to point out that during the COVID era, everybody agrees there was a huge decline.
Yeah.
And if that decline told us anything, it made us question the value of online education, because a lot of people were predicting, wow, with the internet and with like distance learning programs, man, we won't even need teachers. And what we saw is that kids did not do well in a purely online environment. Some kids, it was a fraction of them. So it kind of spoke to the need for kids to be back in classrooms with real teachers, with real classmates, having social interactions, right? But like that thing's starting to bottom out and come up. But that was like a 4-year bubble, you know, that affected that data.
Yeah. I remember that time. It was pretty weird. You know, just learning things differently. It was weird, don't you say?
It was just, you were just getting assigned a lot of work. Kids got assigned a lot, but there was very little teaching. My sympathy went to the kindergarten teacher who's trying to keep 20 kindergarten kids engaged, where in a normal kindergarten class you sit on the reading mat, you come up and you do show and tell, and you're trying to do this on a computer. Yeah, so again, I'm more optimistic about what the statistics say or not. And I commented this to a friend of mine. He's a political partisan. He always baits me with what's wrong with public education and everything. And you know, this thing about of reading and what does the data say? You know, education has been politicized, and maybe that's not a new thing, but if you're running for governor, one of the greatest things you can say on the campaign trail is, we have a crisis in education. So when your predecessors of the opposite political party, that's a great political strategy, because you say his way of doing things. But here in Florida, we've had continuous Republican leadership in public schools since Jeb Bush. So, I mean, this is going back almost 30 years. So every candidate will say there's a crisis. So that, wait, your predecessor, wasn't he doing his job? But everybody claims there's a crisis in education that needs to be fixed. Here's another statistic I'd like to share with you.
I'll do it.
Okay, have you ever heard of the Gallup polling organization? Gallup, Gallup.
No.
So Gallup is probably one of these legacy organizations, but like the Pew Research Center, they do big surveys of the population. So here's a statistic that remains constant from year to year. They do the state of American education. They've been doing that for 50 years. So one question they ask the respondents is, how happy are you with the education your children are receiving? And most respondents, this means more than 50%, declare that they're either happy or extremely happy with their children's education. Okay, that doesn't mean there aren't any problems, but now listen how the responses change when you ask this question. how happy are you with the state of education in America? Now, that's like a real political question. And so when you ask that question, people will say like 10% agree that they're happy, even though they're happy with their children's education. So like, what does that tell you? I mean, is there some disconnect? Like, as it affects me personally, things are going pretty good. I like my kids' school. I like their teachers. But when you ask me the state of education, that's now a political question. And like, people, they tend to react more emotionally when you're asking them political questions than when you're asking them like personal connection kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the schools are without their problems, but my friend who always baits me, he's a lawyer. And I'm like, hey, let's stop talking about the education. Let's talk about the legal system.
Yeah.
My wife had a business dispute and like she got sued and like all of a sudden we need a $5,000 retainer.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Yeah.
Right. And then you pay the retainer and all of a sudden the thing gets dismissed and like, we just paid $5,000 for what? But you know what I'm saying?
That's what we call pulling the Uno reverse card. You pulled the Uno reverse card on.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to remember. But I'm just saying that any societal organization, right? They're imperfect. But I'd say like if you compared like the education system to like the law enforcement system, we're doing pretty good. Compared to law enforcement, I'd say if we're talking about real estate and how unaffordable housing is, I think we do a better job of educating people than however these real estate people are supposed to provide housing. Like they've got their problems too. Mm-hmm. So don't act like we're the ones that got all the big problems, right? Mm-hmm.